Okay, so it is week 6 in our course. Week 6 is like, to me, kind of crazy when I think about just how much has already gone by. I've been working on a couple things. I'm going to just do a little update and then I'm going to go through the course like what we're doing this week, try to keep it relatively short. Most of the points is going to come from a reply and a refactor. Okay, so you're going to have, because this week we learn about joins. Okay, so we learned about static queries, we learned about nested queries, and now you're going to learn about joins. So joins are a really nicer way to write how to query across tables, join them together, and you're going to learn about left ones, right ones, full ones. These are all part of outer ones, outer family. Then you're going to learn about natural ones. And when I say ones, I mean joins. So I thought what I would do in the video here, and actually I might be repeating this, so I apologize. I recorded this Sunday and I'm recording this on Tuesday, is that I wanted to give you a little pre-learning about taking the lost letter and updating it, writing joins. So what you'll want to do is code along. And after, here is the thing I would update, is that after I finish this, I realized I was talking about order of precedence, and really what I wanted to talk about at the end of this was execution order. Because by the way, if you haven't thought about it like this, and I posted this out on Discord, this class is about learning to program. Queries are little mini programs or larger programs depending on how sophisticated or how in-depth these queries can be. So all these principles will be helpful to you. I'm assuming you'll go on to take some kind of programming course, maybe in the data analytics, maybe my JavaScript, maybe Python, maybe C++. But learning these basic concepts are really helpful. And I thought I would introduce the idea of execution order to understand how these queries are executed. This is not part of the points, but I wanted to introduce it now because we'll revisit it later. Okay? One question I wanted to answer related to the attendance, and I appreciate this question, and I won't mention the student's name. You could see who posted it because it was a really good question. And in all my other courses, I actually only have 1 point for attendance because it's really just my way of doing attendance. But for this class, because I knew I was going to have something more involved with the attendance, because it's basically our discussion. In all my other classes, there's an actual discussion that happens during the week. So what I decided is I knew I was going to handle this class a little different. This is worth 5% of your grade. And so, yeah, it is 1 point, but that 1 point, and this is what's important to understand on a course that has weighted grades, which means each category of the different assignments. Like if you were to go into assignments, which I was working on today because I was working on the problem set, you can actually scroll through here and you can see that the stuff the ICA I've just been doing, which is just tutoring. But again, hopefully you have an understanding about how those can help you do your authenticate or your README files. But in this case, you can see if you come in here 25% for the technical interview, which I had now have drafted the schedule, so you'll see that in the coming weeks. Attendance is 5%, right? So even though it's 1 point, you could look at that as 5%. The code-alongs are 30, and really important to know, these problem sets are 40%. And that's why that is really important, because the idea of the problem sets, now that I'm talking about this, is really the idea of taking what we're learning in the code-alongs and applying it. And this is where I've really moved to make that README file way important in the problem sets, because it's really where I see how well you're translating those concepts. But coming back to here, this is true that even though it's 1 point, it's 5% of your grade. Okay, so just FYI. And by the way, if this looks different, you may have seen this in the beginning. I'm actually working at home today. I have a little bit of something going on. I did take a test. It is negative, so but it sure feels like that thing we've had in the past because this is what it felt like. But like most people, we all have to just work through it. Okay, so now let's talk about this week because in the assignment that you're going to have for this week, the last part, right? There's really nothing new here, but what I did want to talk about was the problem set. Because we're going to do a different problem set. And by the way, there was two other problems that was on the problem set for packages, and those would be good to go practice. But because I knew we had three different data sets that we could play with, I wanted to play with each. So this week we play with 1 through 6 in the DSE, which is the Department of Education for Boston, or not Boston, but Massachusetts. So we're going to have 6 queries around that, and then you'll have some getting to know queries there. And so you're going to see this as a common thing when we move data sets, when we move to a new data set. I think of these as calisthenics because whenever you're dealing with a new data set, you really do want to take some time to get to know it. And also, I consider these getting to know data set queries. I kind of consider them calisthenics in the sense that it helps warm you up because I've noticed for me that just sitting down to start writing queries, reading problems, whoa, it takes a little bit for my head to kind of get into it. So, and I think it's just good to spend a little time looking at that. Okay, so, but what I want to say here, and I'm going to come into the README file, because I did do a couple things different in the README file. What's the same is that for each query you do, it's that same process of doing the commit file, updating the README file, writing the query, commenting out the last one. But I have added this schema getting to know, right? So first you'll write those queries. So I don't want this to be confusing when you see this for each problem. Then we get into here, which has got a different commit message, getting to know the DESE dataset. Okay, so then here's the specification. So the other thing I've done here is that I've included in this here's your first query, right? And then here's the results of what would come back. So what you would expect, 2 columns, right? And a lot in this case. And in the refactor, I actually show a pretty simple way to see the number of records returned. If you didn't want to count, which I would not want to in that case. Okay, so that's there. You'll have 6 of these. Don't forget the importance of that README file. As we go forward, it's going to become something that I will want to see that authentic work. So just keep that in mind. I've been just helping people get used to it. Seems like most people have gotten it. I notice a difference like from normal part 1 to normal part 2. The normals, data 1. So the other thing I want to say is what I've provided here, and I've provided an additional, and I'll just say this, a little additional hint in here, which might be worth seeing. And I'm also working on my prompts. So I've worked on a couple things. I've put do not hallucinate, right? This is something I read recently. If you just tell the prompt, because this is what this is, like look how long this prompt is, which by the way, is what we call the context window. So when we're writing AI prompts, right, you may think of them as short questions, they are, but this context window is getting larger and larger and larger to where we can throw more and more data at it. So in this case, I give it my standards, our standards for writing, just styling standards, and then I give it this schema, and then I tell it precisely, right, don't provide the SQL, help me understand problem solving, and then here's the problem. And I will tell you, I've provided a little hint, because the one thing is that you might think because of us coming off of joins, right, you're going to learn joins, but you're also going to learn group bys, right, and order bys when doing this kind of, it just takes this, what we've already learned, because we've already been introduced these concepts to a new level. So I just want you to know, now, can you write a join for this first one? Sure. You don't have to. And I've provided these hints. That's what I guess I'm trying to show you. Let's see, I've provided these hints. Let's go back in each of them, right? Now, again, keep in mind, oh, and I did mention this last time, but I'll mention it again. So anyway, there's a hint in each one of them. You can check that out. And I'm really trying to also, I noticed there's a group of students doing these, which is great. The feedback is helpful to me. I go through and read to see how well my prompt is working. It's something work in progress. And to see if they're helping you actually get to problem solving step by step to get to a query. But as I showed last time, when you're running them, right, you can do, when you're writing a longer query, right, you can do the shift enter to allow you to right get started. Make sure you hit submit. It's really important if you want me to consider this as part of your readme, do that. So remember, just like I mentioned last week, you can do shift, hold shift key down, hit enter to write a longer SQL statement, right? So was there anything else in here I did differently? No, I've just been kind of tweaking my prompt here. So it's something I'm enjoying working on, and it seems like for the students who are using it, it's helping them as well. Okay. All right. So next week, week 7, 8, and then 9, and then I am going to talk about probably maybe next week. We have 2 problem sets, and we'll be doing, I believe we'll be doing a Moneyball for baseball stats. That should be fun. We're doing that next week, so we'll have to see how much time I need to talk about that. But I will have an update on the technical interview at that point. All right, so what you need to do this week is what I've already talked about here. Oh, there was one thing after doing this video, right? So most of the points you can come, it'll come from mostly doing this work. I do want, and I'll give you a percentage here. I do, questions are great, or comments about doing this refactor. Learning, again, we're pre-learning about joins before we actually go into the code along to learn about them. But I thought about this, the way I wrote the query, the join query. Like if there was, and here's kind of something you could think about, you might attempt to answer it. If between the 2 addresses we were given there was more than one pick up and drop off, how would we have modified the query to show, to answer that specific congratulatory letter? Because I thought about that afterwards, and based on the way I wrote the query, I assumed there was only one drop off and pick up between the 2 addresses, the from and the to. So what if there was multiple? Then how would we modify? So, again, the more of this you do, it's like working out. The more of this you do, the better at it you get. I only know for me, this is true for working out. The more I work out, the heavier the weights I lift, the more I run when I can. Right now I can't. But the more I do this stuff, the better I get at it. And this is true, especially with any kind of technical skill. All right, I'll be quiet. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon.